This is part of the old grounds of Kilronan Castle, and just straight ahead of me is what was one of the entrances to the castle. Long ago, before it ever became a hotel. Now if you look at the entrance gateway, the gates have gone, but it's wide enough for a horse and carriage, a rather big horse and carriage, and then on either side of the main archway you have smaller archways, and that would have been for people to walk through. In the old estates here in Ireland, and especially the old castles, you had gatehouses, and each entrance to the castle had a gatehouse. So with Kilronan Castle, if my memory serves me well, I think there's 4 entrances to the old castle, and this is one of them. Now this one, of course, is not used anymore. In fact, if we look up the road, you can see that the old roadway, I'll just walk up, leads up to what was a porticoed entrance gateway, but now the gates are locked and barred. As you can hear, it's raining. I'll try to keep the camera focused down so as not to get too much water on the lens. So straight ahead of me now you can see cars, and that's the new road into Kilronan Castle. So this road is no longer used. Very few people even bother to come up here. But this is where the old gatehouse, which is a faery house, is built. Now the roof has gone, but I'm just going to show you. I'm going to show you just the magic of this place. Now, to put it into perspective, Kilronan Castle, which was classified as being one of the great Anglo-Irish ascendancy houses. It had been a castle for hundreds of years. But as you know, Ireland was settled by the English, and many of the great castles became part of that settlement to the English lords, and Kilronan Castle would have been one of them. Now, in history going back over the past 150 years, the castle belonged to a family called the Tennyson King, or the King Tennyson family. Whether they were related to the great poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, I can't say for sure, but they were part of the Anglo-Irish ascendancy, as they were called. Now, we'll just pan over to this exquisite little house, little gatehouse, and it is utterly magical. And I'm going to take my time to show you around. So, the roof is gone. If you look up there, you can just see the chimney, one of the chimneys. I don't know whether the roof was thatched or whether it was slated, but the way it's constructed, it's actually built into the side of the actual hill. And the stone that's used is part of the local limestone and sandstone. So you can see some of the stone is ancient, and in fact possibly been removed from much older sites. So where you have these two huge pillars, this would have been a little sort of a sheltering place, maybe for horses. Just standing inside of it now. And looking out. And then we're looking into the actual house itself. We'll go inside in a minute. Quite magical, isn't it? Now, I can say, well, without a doubt, that many of the very famous artists and writers of the 19th and early 20th century would have passed by this little gatehouse, this little fairy house. And I'm quite sure that one of them would have been William Butler Yeats. Because William Butler Yeats, like so many of his generation, would have spent much of his early days in and around the great houses of the Anglo-Irish ascendancy back in the day. And that's how people entertained themselves. They would have house parties, they would have visitors, guests, and it was kind of like a rolling programme. So you'd have the hunting and the fishing and the shooting and weekend parties. So this little fairy house could well have been within William Butler Yeats's imagination, because he surely would have passed it. And of course, William Butler Yeats belonged to the Theosophical Society in London, and he was extremely interested in exploring all the metaphysical aspects of life. So now we're coming into the house. This would have been the doorway, and you can see there are flagstones still there on the floor. You see all the beautiful flagstones. This would have been a little recessed cupboard, and here we have the fireplace. And in fact, if I put the camera in and look up the chimney, you'll be able to see the light up there, right up the old chimney. And then there's the flagstones continue, and you have a beautiful little archway. It's very, very deep, this archway. This little corridor almost. It's very deep. It's about 4.5, 5 foot deep. And it takes you into the very interior of the fairy house. And here you have these beautiful Gothic shapes. So there's a beautiful one there. That was possibly a cupboard. Little fireplace. And this was quite possibly for the outshot bed. In the old cottages you would have had a recess in one of the walls on the inside of the cottage, usually in the sitting room, the little parlour, and that's where the bed would fold out from. So that's quite possibly what that is. Now you can still see some of the plaster still on the walls. That was all lime plaster. And the beautiful deep fireplace. I'm going to put this camera in and point it up. Let's see if there's an opening up there. And now I'm turning around and I'm looking out through the front of the fairy house, and you can see these beautiful little windows. And you also have the windows above. I'm looking for the ties in the wall to see if there was an upper floor. I very much doubt that there was, because the archway goes up quite a height. So that's quite unusual in itself, to have those little windows above. And now we're just looking out through one of the windows here. These stones are amazing. Absolutely amazing. There's another estate not far from here, in Lochkey, and Lochkey Forest Park. Now, the people who lived in that estate, of course, they were all interconnected in one way or another. They all knew each other. They were all part of the same set, so to speak. But there's a bridge down there in the grounds of the old house, and it's actually called the Faery Bridge, and it's built with the same stone as was used here. So this stone can be found in this area of Ireland, just around North County Roscommon. And I must just mention at this point, seeing as we're talking about the metaphysical and about William Butler Yeats and his deeply held belief in fairies and elemental spirits, and that we lived in a world where we perceived very little of what was around us. It's interesting to note that the local big town here is called Boyle, B-O-Y-L-E. Now Boyle is the central part of Ireland which is famous for UFO sightings. It's very interesting to note that, because there seems to be quite a thin veil here in this part of the world, a very thin veil, and where you have the possibilities that the metaphysical world puts out. This is just such a beautiful, ethereal and very strange little place. You can climb up along the bank there and go right along to the top to where the chimneys are, and you can see that it's actually just built in to the very bank. It can only be described as sort of exquisite. There's something so incredibly beautiful and almost mystical about this place. And some of the stones are massive, like that stone there. It's like nothing I've ever seen before anywhere. Let's go close to it. So we're starting here and going up. It's a massive piece of stone that's been sort of etched out of the landscape. And when you look at the stone around the windows here, there's faces, there's spirits, there's all kinds of energy within this little building. Very otherworldly. And of course, that was what was fascinating for William Butler Yeats. That enormous canvas of possibilities that comes with the sense of otherworldliness. It's as though you're able to see shifting energy. You know it's there. And that's where Yeats was so talented, because he had the gift, he had the bardic gift to be able to describe that and put it into words, to translate it for us. I hope that I've managed to translate for you some of the amazing energy that's here within this incredible little spot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull right back onto the road. Put this into context now. So that's the porticoed entrance, which is now locked and barred. And that's the open entrance, which very few people ever drive into or walk into. This place has been left in kind of frozen animation. It's as though it has ceased to exist, but it's here. Very few people ever chance upon it. It certainly fires the imagination. It fires the imagination indeed. I'm going to pull out for as far as I can. I'm walking backwards here, so just bear with me. Right out here. There we go. Now, the cars are driving past on the road outside. It's really like a little portal in time, because out there is the 21st century, and in here it's almost timeless. Timeless, and yet at the same time it's sort of trapped in time. And just up there is Loch Mila. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a faery hand in hand. For the world is too full of weeping than you can understand.